Before we begin the following program, we would like to say that, in our opinion, it is not suitable for children or those of you who are of a Marxist or misandrist disposition.
Coming soon to BBC America, Jodie Whittaker returns as Dr. Pooh. But first, the grumpy old fan.
Oh, no.
Oh, for God's sake!
I don't like it.
I know you don't.
No.
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 But you can't rewrite history. Not one line.
People spend all their time making nice things, and other people come along and break them.
It's the end.
You're the cause of this disaster.
Since we were last on YouTube, quite a lot has happened. Pearl Mackie, remember her? Apparently she's bisexual. Not that anyone gives a toss, but she's been quoted as saying that the next Doctor should be played by a non-binary actor, as that's the, quote, next logical step. But she's no fan of Dave Chappelle. Yeah, the next logical step is to make the most important casting decision since Eccleston a tick box exercise in the name of diversity and inclusion, which we all know is discrimination and exclusion. Someone else who had their lefty credentials on display to keep the Twitter pitchfork mob off their back was RTD2, who first called the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, a fucking idiot, which is the sort of language the left would be up in arms about if anyone said that about him, and nobody attacked him for being anti-feminist, because Dorries isn't an abortionist, so she doesn't count. So, no hypocrisy there then. He was doing this when he was accepting some meaningless award or other, and had a go at the LGB Alliance, whoever they are, for standing up for lesbians, gays and bisexuals, but not transsexuals. Support for the trans minority is fast becoming the moral touchstone of acceptability for the lefties who manipulate our media. I'm old enough to remember when it was homosexuals who were a protected species, but not anymore. Gareth Roberts, James Dreyfus, John Barrowman, David Starkey. It's not enough now to be a homosexual, you need to be a trans-supporting homosexual, like RTD2. Now, as far as RTD2 is concerned, there is an element of not shitting in your own nest going on here. RTD2 can't be seen to publicly criticise Chibnall, which apparently he's done in private if the rumours are to be believed, but do the fan sheep really think that RTD2 is going to retcon the retcon, make William Hartnell the first Doctor again, and save Doctor Who from the wokerati? Don't squee just yet. Speaking of homosexuals, James Dreyfus gave an interesting interview to GB News recently, where he talked about being cancelled by those spineless worms at Big Finish. We love virtue signalling. If you haven't watched it, then you should. The link is in the description, and the Doctor Who stuff comes in at about 12 minutes 29 seconds. The pull quote was when Dreyfus said that he thought by now we would have less labels, not more. But then that's what the left do. They label everyone and call it diversity and inclusion. But it's not very inclusive if all you're doing is constantly highlighting the differences between groups of people. I'm straight, you're gay, he's black, she's white. The whole alphabet soup of what's the latest one? 2LS LGBTQIA plus or some shit? So the 14th Doctor, according to those geniuses Pearl, Non-Entity Mackie and RTD2, should be a non-binary trans actor, which is just what we need to get people watching again. Speaking of trying to get people watching again, in all the excitement over the return of RTD2, possibly the one thing fandom hasn't paid that much attention to is the news that for the first time since Philip Segal made the TV movie with McGann, Doctor Who is going to be a co-production between BBC Studios and Bad Wolf. Now, who are Bad Wolf? Bad Wolf, if you don't know, are an independent TV production company founded in 2015 by ex-BBC bods Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter. Gardner was co-executive producer of Doctor Who back when RTD2 was at the helm, and Tranter was the controller of drama at the BBC, who, along with Lorraine Heggessy, controller of BBC One, brought back Doctor Who. According to LinkedIn, the company employs 147 people. They're responsible for a discovery of Witches for Sky and his Dark Materials for the BBC, and soon they'll be responsible for Doctor Who 2. Bad Wolf operate out of Wolf Studios just outside Cardiff. Now, will these be the studios used to film Doctor Who? If so, what happens to Roast Lock, the current production base? Will they use both? Who knows? Who cares? Who's on the board of the company? Well, there are 8 directors of the company, a couple of whom, Danny Cohen and Daniel Sheenar, will, sad to say, probably find themselves, and Bad Wolf by association, in the crosshairs of the anti-Semitic, insert Angela Rayner word here, in the Labour Party before too long. Unless RTD2 makes them fireproof, of course, because as we all know, lefties don't indulge in selective targeting. Now, the interesting thing about Bad Wolf is that Julie Gardner, one of the co-founders of the company, is no longer a person with significant control. Now, what's a PSC? A PSC is someone who owns or controls the company, owns more than 25% of the company's shares, and has more than 25% of the voting rights. They have the final say of decisions concerning the running of the company. According to the information you can find on Bad Wolf on the company's house website, there were 2 PSCs when the company was formed, Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter, but now, since May 2020, the only PSC in Bad Wolf is Jane Tranter. So Bad Wolf is no longer, on the face of it, a partnership between Gardner and Tranter, but Tranter is now in charge, and with the news that Sony Pictures Television is going to buy the company, that doesn't necessarily mean the girls have had a falling out. It could mean that Gardner is on her way back to the BBC with RTD, if indeed they both are, and she's no longer a PSC to avoid a potential conflict of interest. Perhaps she's simply leaving Tranter to concentrate on running the business side of things while she goes back to being creative with RTD. And May 2020, when Gardner was no longer a PSC, may be an indicator of when the BBC finalised talks with RTD2, as you can't imagine they didn't talk to Gardner when Piers Wanker came along, begging him to come back and pull them from the wreckage of the Chibnab car crash. Was it RTD2 who wanted Bad Wolf as part of his deal to come back? Or did Gardner suggest it and RTD2 thought it was a good idea? Who knows? Either way, the BBC agreed, because they know they've fucked it up. And speaking of fuck-ups, Shitake was on Graham Norton last week. Not that anybody cares. She's finished filming and good fucking riddance. So stand by for Dr. Pooh, Fuxed, because that's what the show is right now. Let's just hope RTD2 fucks it up a lot less. So, Doctor Who, Fuxed, Series 13 is a 6-part story with the umbrella title of Flux. Has had its air date announced, which is Halloween, which is really smart because that's when all the kids will be out trick-or-treating instead of watching Doctor Pooh. And it looks as bad as the rest of the chib shit we've had of late. There are the usual fan-bait cyber people, serious potato people, not comic relief potato dwarfs, sorry you can't say dwarfs anymore can you, potato people of restricted stature, spaghetti men, weeping angels, which is really sexist when you think about it because none of them are blokes. Where are the calls for equal representation there then? Mr. and Mrs. Babylon 5 and a cut price Chewbacca. The good news is that it'll be over by November the 5th, and then there's only 3 more not-so-specials left to endure before we finally get our BBC checkbox non-binary Doctor of Colour. Or maybe RTD will actually cast an actor who's suited to the role. I haven't had one of them for a long time.
There is truth and there is untruth. To be in a minority of one doesn't make you mad.
If you're a lefty and have been affected by any of the issues raised in this program,
Fuck off!